done? What came over me? Who am I? It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it.
Not a memoir, not a promotional interview. This is the first, and possibly last, time Sally Field has spoken, not to apologize, not to explain, but to expose. She was once a gentle icon, a warm light in Forrest Gump, a devoted mother in Steel Magnolias. But behind the spotlight, behind the Oscars and the sweet smile, there was a dark hell, where every man she collaborated with used his fame to impose, abuse, betray. And now, at 78, Sally is no longer silent. She names, she accuses, she burns the illusions. I don't want pity, I want everyone to know who killed my innocence, who turned me into a woman who always smiles in front of the camera, but cries alone in the car. Starting with the first person, a legendary actress that the whole world once worshipped. But for Sally Field, he was the first nightmare of her career. And if you think you know everything about Hollywood, prepare for the first shock. Don't look away, because each name that follows is darker. Watch until the end to find out who made Sally Field almost give up acting forever.
At the very beginning, you can't explain everything that is, but I do know this.
They used to call her America's Girl, sweet, witty, innocent, and unlikable. But behind that gentle smile is a Sally Field that the media has never dared to touch. A woman who carries within her the pain of a survivor, the smoldering hatred of a betrayed person, and loves secrets that could shake Hollywood if revealed. Sally Field is not just the lovely female lead in Forrest Gump. She is the hidden storm of the 70s and 80s, a woman who can turn a look into a weapon, and turn the most powerful men into emotional puppets. Born on November 6, 1946, into a Hollywood family, her mother was an actress, her stepfather was a stuntman. Sally grew up in the spotlight, but also grew up with an unspeakable obsession, being abused by her stepfather throughout her childhood. A truth she only revealed when she was 70, and immediately shocked millions. I didn't know what love was, what control was, what pain was. Everything was mixed up. And I learned to pretend to be okay since I was a child. It was that cruel childhood that led Sally to always fall into unhealthy relationships with men that the media thought were true love. But the truth? A long chain of manipulation, betrayal, and lust. Sally Field entered Hollywood with clear eyes, a heart eager to contribute, and the belief that her seniors, the people she admired on screen, would reach out to teach, support, not crush. But she was wrong. Completely wrong. Because the first person she put her trust in was also the first person to steal her self-esteem. In 1975, in a brief interview, Sally once spoke cryptically about an older, famous co-star who always treated women as backdrops for the leading man to shine. At that time, no one dared to ask who she was talking about. No one dared to name that person. Now there is no need to guess anymore. Sally Field officially named James Cagney. A cinematic monument, a legend in the eyes of the world, but the first person to break the wings of her career. No slaps, no cheap curses, no sex scandals, just cold, numbing manipulation. Cagney didn't need to raise his voice, he used condescension to humiliate. He used contemptuous eyes to deny, he used subtle isolation to break the will of a young actor just starting out in the profession. I used to consider him an idol, but then I realized, he didn't see me as a colleague. He saw me as a child invading a man's territory. A climactic scene took place on the set. Sally, full of enthusiasm, suggested a slight change in a line to suit the character's emotions. Cagney paused, turned his head to look at her, his eyes were empty, and said a sentence that froze time: "You are here to be beautiful. Not to think." That sentence stuck in Sally's mind for nearly 20 years. She began to doubt herself, refused complex roles for fear that she was not smart enough, and disciplined herself by choosing silence instead of giving feedback. Hollywood at that time did not need women to have a voice. And Cagney, like a god on his throne, silenced that voice with a single sentence. But Sally's tragedy did not end there. If James Cagney was the one who used words to kill her spirit, then the second person on the list silenced her with his real hand. A seemingly normal audition turned into a nightmare with no lights, no dialogue, and no way out. And you think you're shocked? Prepare yourself for the next part. The second person's name is a global icon. Oscar-nominated, once called the actor of all time. And behind him is a solid concrete wall built by the biggest PR companies in Hollywood. Sally Field once said, "I'm not afraid of people who scream at me, I'm afraid of people who whisper, and then lock the door." The second person on the list is a monument of American cinema, Marlon Brando. He was the embodiment of passion, of rebellion, of handsomeness that made every woman of that time melt. But for Sally, Brando was the first person to make her feel like she was disposable. He didn't force me with his hands, he forced me with his power. I didn't know that when I walked into that room, I was walking out of myself. In 1976, when Sally was looking for her first adult role after shedding her good girl image, she was invited to a private meeting with Brando, who was then the unofficial curator for a project for Columbia Pictures. Brando said he saw something special in Sally's eyes, that he wanted to explore the hidden depths inside her. But then, when the office door closed, all the artistic offers evaporated. Instead, there was a series of emotional tests that Brando put Sally through, from simulated intimacy to sitting on his lap while he read his lines for real. At the time, I didn't know I was being used. I thought, this is what actresses have to go through if they want to be recognized. Sally left the room in indescribable humiliation, and the role was eventually given to another actress who had been intimate with Brando, according to a studio secretary leaked in an unpublished memoir. What makes the story even more bitter, the press at the time hailed Brando as the discovery of new talent, and no one knew that he had buried a young actor with power and personal desires. I don't hate him for what he did to me, I hate him for what he made me believe. I had to accept it. If you think this scandal was the climax, you haven't heard of the third person, a man Sally once called her soulmate on set, but who was the most painful betrayal of her life. Sally Field once confided, "I don't know if I loved him, or if I loved the feeling of being protected by someone in the midst of the Hollywood wolves." The third man, none other than Burt Reynolds, her famous co-star in Smokey and the Bandit, was the most tearful love of Sally's life. On screen, they were a golden couple. In real life, they were romantic icons of the 70s. But few knew that behind the smiles and the moments holding hands in front of the camera was a relationship full of control, contempt, and sophisticated psychological manipulation. He didn't have to yell, he made me feel small, by praising other women in front of me. Sally revealed in her memoir that Reynolds wouldn't let her read scripts without his approval, that he boycotted anyone who dared to say Sally was more talented than him, and especially, he actively intervened to prevent her from being nominated for an Emmy in 1980, by telling the director directly, "If you nominate her, I won't sign the contract for the sequel." But what hurt Sally the most wasn't power or jealousy, but the betrayal on stage at the 1982 People's Choice Awards. Right after Sally won the Favorite TV Actress category, Reynolds, who was standing backstage, texted her asking her not to mention him in your speech, because he didn't want to be seen as living off his girlfriend's reputation. Sally took the stage, choking up, and for the first time, she was completely silent during her acceptance speech, and then the press headlined, "Cold, Arrogant Sally Field." The industry turned against her for nearly 2 years. I loved him, but he loved the image I created for him. When I wanted to be myself, he left me on stage, and let me fall apart in front of millions of people. You think the beatings are over? No, the fourth man wasn't a co-star, it was a powerful director who had given Sally Field a choice: shut up, or be banished from Hollywood forever. I'll never forget that room, Sally Field once said. The smell of cigarettes, the fluorescent lighting, and a man sitting behind a desk, smiling as if I'd just signed my own death warrant. The fourth man was not as famous as Brando, not as charming as Reynolds. But he was more dangerous than all of them, because he was the invisible power behind dozens of big movies, million-dollar contracts, and a list of actors who should disappear. Sidney J. Mayer, the producer and director who made many big names in the 1980s. For Sally, he was the man who made her lose her dream, in exchange for her existence. In 1984, Sally was nominated for the lead role in a major war movie. But the final audition took place not on a set, but at a 5-star hotel in Beverly Hills. When Sally entered the room, she saw no script. No director. Just Mayer, a glass of brandy, and a file. He opened the file and showed Sally a list of actresses who had been promoted in his films, with behind-the-scenes photos. Some of them were nude. Some, Sally recognized, had been her co-stars. He didn't yell. He didn't blatantly proposition. He just said, "Do you know why Julia got that part and you didn't?" Then Mayer pulled out a photo of Sally at an event 6 years earlier and smiled. "You were brilliant. Don't let yourself fade away because you're not versatile in your career." Sally got up, left, and 3 days later was told she'd been replaced for not fitting the image of war. A few weeks later, she found out that the role had gone to an unknown model, and the film went on to win 4 Oscar nominations. The most painful thing, no one believed Sally when she told her agency. "If you want to live in Hollywood, let it die," whispered a former PR advisor in a private meeting. "It was the first time in my life I thought about quitting. And the only time I wrote a suicide note, I never sent it. It seemed like hell was over, but the fifth man cut the deepest, the secret lover Sally Field had ever thought she would marry, but left her when she was pregnant." Sally Field always avoided talking about her children in interviews in the 1980s. People thought she was private. But the truth? She was hurt, angry, and carrying a secret that no one was allowed to know. The fifth person on the list, not a co-star, not a director. He was the first lover who made Sally think, "I'm going to be a mother." Clint Eastwood. It started in 1973, when they both attended a film event in Palm Springs. Clint was basking in the aura of Dirty Harry. Sally was a rising star with a clean image. The press had captured them smiling together, but no one knew what followed: secret rendezvous, handwritten letters, and nights when Sally sneaked out of hotels through the back door. Clint was married, but with Sally, he promised, "I'll clean everything up, you just have to trust me." I loved him like a child loves the first person who says, "I won't leave," and I believed. In August 1974, Sally found out she was pregnant. She wrote a trembling handwritten letter to Clint, and 2 days later, she received a postcard with only 5 scribbled words: "Don't make things complicated." No phone call, no inquiry, no shoulder. Just an appointment card for a clinic in Santa Monica, sent through an assistant. Sally went to the clinic alone, wearing a hat, sunglasses, and signed the abortion papers under a false name. "I don't hate him for making me get rid of the baby, I hate him for not having the courage to show up." Not an apology, not an "are you okay?" question. Not even one. After the incident, Sally was depressed for more than a year. She refused all roles. Avoided all media meetings. And the strange thing, the Hollywood press at that time, was completely silent. Not a single news. Not a single rumor. Only much later, when a close friend of Sally's, a makeup assistant, recounted in her personal diary, she had a child with Clint, but Hollywood didn't want it to exist, because they needed to keep his image clean. You think that was the deepest wound? No. The last one, the fatal stab. A man who played her son on film, but in real life was the one who used Sally's reputation to climb the ladder, then turned around and publicly smeared her as an ungrateful person. Hollywood has an unspoken rule: never trust anyone who calls you mom on screen. Sally Field didn't believe it, until Tom Hanks made it happen. In 1994, Forrest Gump took the world by storm. Sally Field played Forrest's mother, bringing intense emotions to millions. She and Tom Hanks, who played Gump, became the perfect model for a mother-son relationship on screen. Off-set, Sally once called Tom, "the guy who made me believe in young Hollywood." They regularly sent each other birthday cards, and Tom even attended Sally's family parties. She believed that, in middle age, she had found her true soulmate. Until 2004, in an interview with The Atlantic, Tom Hanks was asked about the overwhelming success of his role as Forrest. He laughed and replied, "I think a lot of the emotion of the film comes from the weakness of the mother character. I always felt like she was the tragic arm that pulled the film down." The quote was all over the newspapers. Sally called, no answer, emailed, no response. Finally, she received a cold message from Hanks's agent. Tom wants the audience to remember him as an independent individual, not as someone who was taken by the role of mother. Sally was silent for 19 years. But now, at 78, she no longer maintains her image for anyone. I don't hate Tom for saying that, I hate it because it came from someone I once considered flesh and blood. And because after all, I realized, in this world, even someone who calls themselves a mother, can sell themselves out to get to the next level. The story is not just about Tom Hanks. It's about all the other movie kids who stood in the limelight with her, then turned their backs, because Hollywood only remembers the last one standing on the podium. You've just heard the 6 names that Sally Field hated the most, but really, this is not just a list of hate. This is a list of human scars, and every moviegoer, every woman who has ever been in the shadow of a powerful man, will see herself in it. Sally Field sat before the camera. No more bright lights. No more applause. Just a 78-year-old woman, with a shaky memory and a voice that trembled, but was as sharp as ever. I don't name these 6 names for revenge. I don't need anyone destroyed. I just want to be remembered, for who I was. For more than half a century, Sally Field has lived as a shadow behind the character. Hollywood remembers only the role. They don't want to remember the price a woman paid to stand. The price is not measured in money, not in gold statues, but in auditions in locked rooms, unanswered letters, snaps from bigwigs, unborn children, fake hugs on the red carpet. Those 6 men didn't kill me, but they made me save myself, every day, every year, by refusing to be silent. She doesn't cry, nor does her voice tremble. Her voice is low, each word like a knife cutting through the air. If you're watching this video, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I just want you to see me, not as Forrest Gump's mother, not as Oscar heroine, but as a woman who survived a world that wanted me gone if I dared to speak up. She looks up, straight into the camera. Don't idolize someone for so long that you forget they were mean to someone. And if there's a young actress watching, remember, you are not a piece of merchandise, you are the story. If you feel this story needs to be told, share it. Don't let the truth die with the survivors. Don't let the scars be buried in the limelight. And if you want to know how many more women like Sally Field, keep following this channel's #Untold Story series, where the truths that never make it into the papers are revealed page by page.